Good morning. I don't know where you're located, but it may not be morning still wherever you are. We still have about 30 minutes worth of morning left, and I'm sorry for my wobbly video. I'm going to try and set this up. My computer wouldn't let me go live with my computer today, so I have to use my phone, so I'm a little wobbly. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see. Sorry. I'm not sure why. I just got off a Zoom meeting, a coaching meeting, so I'm not sure why it won't let me do it, but it won't, of course. I don't know. So today, I hope everybody's having a great Friday. I am so glad it's finally Friday. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've really been focusing on right now. And for those of you who don't listen to my podcast or aren't subscribed to my newsletter, I just wanted to just let you guys know what's going on with me and what my focus has really been right now. So my husband recently had a stroke just a couple weeks ago, and so it's really gotten me thinking about how our centers need to be prepared for our personal life events. So my husband has end-stage kidney disease, and he is on dialysis, and it has been a very rough journey, but lately it's been really, really hard. He needs a lot of care, and I haven't been able to really go to my center at all. I'm pretty much stuck uh, as a caregiver right now, which I'm not going to say stuck. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be his caregiver. But that wasn't the case a few years ago. In 2012, he also had an incident happen, and my center was not prepared at the time for something like this to happen. And so it's very interesting for me as an owner, director, to be going through the same type of thing now. Here I am 8 years later, and how different things are, and how much just being prepared has really saved my center this time. The first time something like this happened and a life event took me away from my center, um, my center could not function without me because I didn't have enough systems in place, I didn't have processes, and I wasn't delegating. So now I learned the hard way that your center has to be okay without you. So just to think about that, just how would your center fare if you had to be gone for a couple weeks? If something were to happen to you or a family member, life happens to every single one of us. No matter how diligent we are, things will inevitably happen. It's just a part of life, right? Every one of us experiences tough times. Every one of us is going to experience things that make it so you can't go to work every morning. So, what kind of systems do you have in place to make sure that your center is okay in case you do need to step away? So, that is really my focus on the podcast and my newsletter and whatnot, is just making sure things are set and that your center is doing well. You can message me with questions you might have. Make sure you listen to my podcast episode. Do what There's a lot of information. I also, in my newsletter, I also have a short article about things you can do to prepare yourself. But I will just go over a couple of them, and I'm going to be looking back and forth, just going over a couple things that I am just incredibly grateful that I have put into place at this time, because now this has enabled me so that I can do this. I can do my side coaching business like right now and be my husband's full-time caregiver. If I hadn't learned these lessons 8 years ago, I wouldn't be able to be here for him. So just to go over some of the things that I've got in place now that have put me in this position where I can now be home with my husband and be his caregiver. So, if just all of us I can guarantee you guys in life, we will all go through tough times. And every one of us, our centers need to be ready and for something to happen. It just center disaster proofed. If you're just starting your center, you're at a wonderful time where you can really just format things so that in case you have to walk away, you'll still be okay. So, the first thing that you're going to need is to really learn how to delegate. And I really go into detail on this on my podcast, so I'm not going to go into too much detail now. But delegating is very important. It just, when you delegate, you're not taking everything on your shoulders. That's also the key to make sure that you're not working your center 50 hours a week, right? Just become a delegator. I know most of us in managerial positions, we tend to be control freaks. So I know I am absolutely. It was very hard for me to learn how to delegate. My assistant, who is now my director, teases me that it only took me 11 years to finally turn over the reins to her. So delegating is very, very important. Um, the next thing is make sure all your processes and procedures are in writing. Having a written plan is just so important. That way, if you're not there for some reason, there's a manual the people who are taking over for you can go through. They can see your step-by-step procedures, even when it comes to paying your bills. Create a calendar. This is what bill is due on this date, and have an area where your passwords are established, they're stored somewhere. So in case you do have to ask somebody to come and help you, that way it's accessible to them, right? They have the procedures, they know when things are done, and they have the passwords and whatnot they need in order to access the things that they need to access. So that is very, very important. Um, I actually bought a signature stamp a couple years ago. I was actually hospitalized, and it was really tough on my staff. I was in the hospital when payroll came around. So my assistant at the time just was trying to scramble, figure out how she was going to get payroll done. I was the only person who had signing capabilities for paychecks. So it was just, she ended up bringing me the paychecks to the hospital to get them signed. So after that, I did have a signature stamp created for myself, which is just, I can't believe it sounds so simple, but it has come in handy so many times. And just make sure if you do that, the stamp goes to somebody who you really, really trust. If you're putting your signature on a stamp that they can just stamp blank checks, you want to make sure that person is very trustworthy. So that actually is kind of a small thing, but it really helped me a lot. Um, Having a business coach is huge. I didn't have my business coach, and I think everybody needs that higher level coaching. So at the time, I didn't have my coach, and so I was kind of lost. Now I do. So she actually steps in to help me with things. She's actually the one making sure right now, as I'm home with my husband and I'm doing the caregiving, she's taken on some of my center duties to enable me that time I need to be with my husband. So making sure that you have somebody is a big thing. Um, I listen to a podcast. One of the ones I listen to is and she also talks about it's so important to have a coach because you never want to vent down. You don't want to vent down to your employees. You don't want to go to them with your problems. If you're having some kind of business problem, they are not the people you want to be brainstorming with and bouncing ideas back of. You always want to go up for things like that, right? So the way she says it is your business coach is you. And, no matter how good my business is running now, no matter how like my preschool feels like it's just in a great place, I will always keep my coach. And she's worth every dime I pay her because of how she helps my business to just stay in line. And I tease her and say she's my Jiminy Cricket. She's just that my accountability partner. She keeps me accountable. And when I do need to bounce ideas off of somebody, she's the one I bounce ideas off of. So that is just something to think about. Make sure your finances are organized. Your bookkeeping. before I hired my coach, my bookkeeping was a mess. Nobody could have sorted through it, and it just took me so long to get through because it was such a mess. So now that my bookkeeping is very systematic, very clean, it takes half the time to get through. And in a situation like I'm in right now, where my coach's team can kind of step in and help me with that, it's not something that only I can read. Now it's actually well organized so that I can get that help I need. So making sure that your business finances as well as your business procedures and policies, same type of thing. It's just different areas of that, having written procedures into place and being very organized. Very, very important. Um, you have an accountant that you can really, really trust. An accountant that is very responsible and you have a really good relationship with. Your accountant or bookkeeper, and you may have both, that should not be a person that you're seeing one time a year. Absolutely not should be the person that you're just handing everything over for tax time and that's the only time you see them. I actually talk to mine monthly. So the other thing I have to say about that is I have had an accountant that was embezzling from me. And at the time, I did not know nearly enough about my business and how to run it financially, from a financial standpoint, to know until she literally disappeared out of town. So just protect yourself. One of my mottos has become nobody cares about your money like you do, right? So just have a good relationship. Even if you're a director, encourage your owner, just have them watch this and let them know it's just so important to have a good relationship with that person. um Talk to a lawyer. We should have those professionals in our lives, and I know we have a tendency to not want to spend money, but there are some things that we really need to know. It's we Sometimes in life we need to spend money in order to make more money, and there's things that you can't afford not to do. So talk to a lawyer. Make sure that you have processes in place, that legalized structures that we need in order to make sure that your business is safe in case something happens to you or in case you have to step away, that your structure is correct. It is a lot more expensive to be reactive than proactive. And that, again, is another thing I have learned the hard way. I used to be very reactive to everything. I didn't really make sure that I was staying ahead of problems. I was just reacted. And I've just learned to really shift that. Instead of being reactive, I've just changed my thinking and become proactive. Um, the other thing too is talk to your insurance agent. Really make sure that you are insured properly. That's another one that you want to have a good relationship with. You don't want to just blindly trust that they have you in the best insurance plan for your center. You want to sit down and ask them. Make sure that different things are covered. Is your facility covered so that for enough money? So if something were to happen, is it really covered to make sure that you could replace what you need? Make sure that the goods inside, not only do you have to look at that building, but you got to look at all those furnishings, your supplies, everything inside that building. Does your insurance have enough coverage? If you're a director, make sure of that stuff, because if something were to happen, which things happen throughout this country every day, um, will you guys be able to rebuild? And not only will you be able to rebuild, but will you be able to restock? Will you be able to take your center to exactly where it is at this moment? Do you have enough funding for that? So in your insurance policy, also make sure that you have enough coverage for everything you need coverage. One that kind of sounds silly is things like having a terrorist clause, right? Well, turns out that if you have a disgruntled parent that comes in, that is considered a terrorist. So those are the kind of things where it kind of sounds crazy, but you want to make sure that it's covered. And you want to think like, sit down and think of every scenario that can happen to your center. Google search things that, like, everything that can happen to in a childcare setting, right? A daycare, preschool, whatever. Use all the different Google search terms and really ask yourself, do I have enough coverage? And you want to actually put it in writing, take it to your insurance agent. Am I covered for this, and this, right? A few years ago, I am outside the Reno area by about an hour. And a few years ago, there was actually an active shooter that went into a preschool here. And it's a pretty cool story. The director ended up talking him down and nothing happened. But still, what if it did? Was that center insured for that? And make sure that the coverage is high enough. Think of like, how much would this actually, talk to your insurance agent. If you're not, maybe even post that in the group. Maybe that's something we'll post in the group and start a discussion on. But different things like that. Make sure that, so the three professionals you want to have really good, well, there's actually four you really want to have good relationships with. You want, it is a lawyer. You want to make sure, I know I used to just really be like, I can't spend the money on a lawyer. It's just too much money. But I'm telling you guys, it is cheaper to do it and be proactive about it. Again, an insurance agent, you want that relationship. Don't just send them a check every month. Make sure you've got that relationship. And once a year, just go through to make sure you're insured properly. Your accountant and a business coach. Those are just the four vital relationships that I make sure I have to make sure that my plans are in place. And like I said, it has served me so well. I can't even tell you right now, with what my family is going through, it's just so nice for me to know my center's okay without me, to know that the people I have in place I can trust and they're fine, to know, just that everything is going fine, even with what my family is going through right now. And I can tell you again, when I went through this in 2012, we were not okay. So it is a huge, as I'm going through this, I can sit back and just be relieved that my center is okay right now without me being there. And as for that too, I have to give a shout out to my staff. I have the most amazing staff at my center. That they really have stepped up, and they know their job so well. They do such a wonderful, amazing job, and that I can feel confident and I know that it's okay. It's been about 2.5 weeks, and I just getting the opportunity right now to start going back in, which I still can't even go in on a daily basis, but I am just literally yesterday was my first day where I was actually really able to go and spend a very small amount of time, just a couple hours, but I was still able to go into the center. And just, that security of having a wonderful staff in place. And on that note, that wonderful staff, it took some work to get there, right? It's not something it didn't just happen overnight. And I'm sorry, my puppy, I have a puppy that's barking. It's so hard to get her not to bark sometimes. But that's not something that just happened overnight. It was very intentional. I have a 6-month onboarding process now, and it's something we've developed over the last couple of years. I've really started to change. We never used to have an official onboarding process. We just kind of like, I think in our industry, it's most of it like somebody new starts, you start in the classroom and tell the lead teacher to go ahead and train them. Well, we don't do it that way anymore. We now have a whole series where our new hires have a 30-day packet that they get, which actually also even includes video now. And it's just a 30-day getting them onboarded. And then we have a 6-month onboarding, which is why it's part of the reason. Having great employee retention is a big puzzle that takes a lot of pieces. But that has definitely changed things for us, is just having a really, really strong onboarding procedure, which is something I'm going to be working with one of my clients with right now. We're going to be developing her onboarding for her center, and specific to her center, just to make sure that the culture of her center is just there from the get-go. So, that's another thing that I have in place to make sure that my center is very prepared for my departure. Everybody knows their job. I don't have to micromanage anymore. I don't have to just follow people around to make sure, it's all just done. And if I need to step away, my center is okay, which it takes a lot of work, but it's doable. and it's so worth it. Let me tell you. So when these life events happen, it really helps a lot. So just wanted to go over some of the things I'm going to be doing. I will be hosting Facebook Lives once a week, and what I'm hoping to do is have the Facebook Live go to along with my podcast and the training class I release every week. Every week we're releasing a training class if you're part of our membership. And these Facebook Lives will go through something that is on our training and the podcast. It all kind of goes together. And it also gives you guys an opportunity to ask me questions. So those of you who are watching, feel free to type in a question and I'd be happy to answer it for you. But that's pretty much my goal, is just to do this. I will announce the time every week. My husband has a lot of therapies and a lot of doctor's appointments, so I'm not going to be able to set the time weekly, but I will at the beginning of the week. Once I know what our schedule looks like, I will be able to post what time and what day the Facebook Live will be occurring every week. I am going to try to do it towards the end of the week, every week, Thursday or Friday. That way everybody has plenty of time to watch our trainings that's released every week and listen to the podcast. That way it just kind of makes sense and it just complements it. The training we just released is called Going from Manager to Leader, and it just talks about how you can, it really dives into identifying what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how do you get to that next level? How do you go from being just somebody who is managing your center to becoming a leader? So that is our focus. Last week we did our vision and our mission, which vision, having a strong vision and plan for your center is absolutely vital. It is the foundational piece to making sure that you are prepared to go to that next level. If you want a higher quality center, if you want a more successful center, if you're not making enough money, that is the foundation. Having a strong vision for your center, it's like having a roadmap. The best way I can think of explaining it is when we're going on trips, we plan, right? We pick a destination and then we plan based on the destination that we chose. If you don't have a good plan in place, you're not going to get there, right? So, and most of us don't just wake up and say, I'm going to get in my car and drive somewhere. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but that's how I'm going to spend my vacation. That's just not what we do. It's just not productive. It would be a waste of money. It doesn't make sense, although it sounds fun. It just, at this point in my life, it doesn't make sense. So your vision actually works as that destination, right? Your vision is your destination, and your mission and your values is how you're going to get to that destination. And once you have a vision in place, you can start creating the path to fulfill that vision. So it's kind of cool. My visions I do for 3-year periods, and then I break them down annually, and I go over this in the training in detail, how to get this done, and there's a workbook included into it too on how you can do this. But I break them down 3 years, then I do annual, then I do monthly, then I do weekly, and I just make it into small achievable steps. And that is, it's really cool when you're at the end of that 3 years and you can see your vision came to fruition. There is nothing cooler than, I just reviewed my last vision that the due date was 2020, and just seeing like where not only did I hit my vision markers, but I went above and beyond. It was really, really a cool feeling. So that's something that last week's training does focus. And if you do have a membership, you get to go back to all the training. All the trainings are available for you. The other thing too is this week on the podcast, I do talk about delegating, and I go into a lot more detail than I did just now about delegation. So be sure to check out the Childcare Business Coach podcast for more information and on that. And last week I went into preparing your center for disaster, just for life events. So make sure, if you didn't catch that, if you're in a position, that's just something, you guys, no matter how good your life seems right now, how things are, I cannot tell you how quickly things change. When my husband was diagnosed with end-stage kidney disease, we had no idea what was going on. So everything that's happened in the last year since then has just kind of, we just weren't prepared. I mean, thank God I did put stuff into place because, like I said, in 2012, I wasn't as prepared as I am now. But you just never know. Life just happens, and none of us can stop it. None of us can avoid it. And something happens to every single one of us. It is part of the human experience. So next week, my focus is going to be on time management. One of the biggest complaints I hear and see from directors is that they don't have enough time, and that they can't do this and that. They're working too much. They're exhausted. They're burnt out. And so I'm going to teach you guys the techniques that I use to take control of my time. And the learning that I've gone through classes, read a lot of books and different things because time management was one of my weakest points. And I'm going to teach you guys what I did to learn how to manage my time. And I'll tell you the biggest thing I learned that was a shocker for me is I did have time. I really did. I just wasn't managing it well. And you guys, at my peak, I owned 3 centers. I have 2 children. I'm a wife. And I also was running a youth group program through my church, or I was helping with a youth group program through my church. And so I just kept thinking to myself, as I was the director of one of my centers, and I would tell myself, with everything I have no time, I have no time. And by the way, through all this, I live with a neurological disease. So, I would constantly make up excuses and tell myself, oh, between my disease that I have to manage, my neurological condition, and between the 3 centers and the church activities I have and my children and being a wife, I have no time. Well, when I really set out to learn how to manage my time better and how to take control of my time, I realized that I really did have time. I just had really poor time management. I just didn't know how to manage my time. So that's something I'm really going to focus on next week, teaching you guys is how to take control back of your time and the techniques you can put into place that are pretty easy to take control of your time. So that will be our feature on the podcast, on our training, and of course I'll have an article put out about that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to message or post it on our Facebook page, but we will definitely do more on time management next week. And of course, as always, let me know any subjects you guys would like me to really dive into. I don't mind doing something different with the podcast than I'm doing with the training. The training schedule is pretty much set in stone, but the podcast I can definitely change up if I get enough requests to go to cover a specific subject. I will definitely do a podcast episode on that. So that is it for today. If you guys want any more information, please feel free to message me. Have a wonderful week. Bye.